Greetings, one and all. Thank you for tuning into today's webinar, How Schools Can Implement New Tobacco-Free Laws. My name is Sarah Planch, and I'm a school health education consultant in the Coordinated School Health and Safety Office at the California Department of Education. Joining me today are my colleagues, John Lagomarsino and Margarita Garcia. Also with us is Teresa Tsai, our 2P intern from Sacramento State University, and we're so grateful for her contributions to this presentation. Within the Coordinated School Health and Safety Office is the Tobacco Use Prevention Education Program, better known as the 2P program. Today's webinar is intended for our funded projects and tobacco prevention partners. This webinar is being recorded. In today's webinar, the following will be reviewed: the law's impact on schools, information about signs and other resources. We'll talk about tobacco policies, why they're important, and provide you with some resources. Talk about how to communicate tobacco policies, enforcement, consequences, give you some information on how to become tobacco-free certified, and then we will take your questions in writing by using the Q&A box from your computer. So one of the major impacts of the new tobacco-free laws is how it redefined tobacco. Please take a moment to familiarize yourself with these definitions if you haven't seen them already. So you'll see here, for example, products containing, made, or derived from tobacco or nicotine intended for human consumption through the following ways: smoked, heated, chewed, absorbed, dissolved, inhaled, snorted, sniffed, ingested, including but not limited to electronic cigarettes, pipe tobacco, little cigars, chewing tobacco, cigarettes, and snuff. So on this slide, it continues by providing more definitions of what smoking is. Smoking means inhaling, exhaling, burning, carrying any lighted or heated cigar, cigarette, pipe, other tobacco or plant products intended for natural or synthetic inhalation, electronic smoking device creating aerosol or vapors, and even oral smoking device for circumventing smoking prohibition. So practically, what does all of this mean? Essentially, students are prohibited at all times on all local lead educational agency property the use of all tobacco products and the use and possession of electronic device delivery systems or other vaporized liquids. On the right-hand side, there's information about staff, visitors, and contractors, for example. Staff, visitor, contractors using school property for community are also prohibited at all times on all local educational agency property or LEAs from using tobacco products. They are also prohibited from using the electronic delivery devices. The difference essentially is this: these visitors may possess an end product, not use it, but they may possess it. Exceptions to these rules are that tobacco products in any prescription form, such as nicotine patches, gum, and lozenges. So, tobacco is prohibited on all county offices of education, charter schools, and school districts. This refers to all K through 12 public schools in California. This includes school grounds and even when participating in school-sponsored activities off school property. Here's a little flow chart at the bottom about whether or not you receive TUPE grants. Even if you do not receive a TUPE grant, the prohibition still applies. So the law requires all LEAs to post signs at all school property entrances. The sign must state that tobacco use is prohibited. And given the high increase of electronic cigarettes amongst youth, we would certainly encourage calling out electronic cigarettes on these signs if there is an opportunity to do so. On this particular slide, it's a list of companies where you can purchase your signs, although many counties choose to work with their local sign shops. And of course, this is acceptable, but the signs must meet requirements in Health and Safety Code. I will show you some signs in the next few slides so you can see what a typical sign would make you compliant with the law and what is considered non-compliant. On this particular slide also, I wanted to call out the Tobacco Education Clearinghouse of California at the top of the list. They receive funding from our friends at the California Tobacco Control Program and have provided tobacco prevention materials and tobacco control materials in multiple formats for the past 20 years. They really are a top-notch organization, and I've worked with them closely in the past. Beginning in January 2017, Tech Materials, or the Tobacco Education Clearinghouse of California materials, will be going digital. So if you need to purchase more signs, please do contact them today. Their link has been provided, and their telephone number is 1-800-258-9090. So here are some of the signs that may seem familiar to you. Please note how the signs on the left call out the prohibition of tobacco use. Some counties use different signs, which again is acceptable so long as the tobacco use prohibition is called out. Not to belabor the point, but it's very important in terms of compliance with the law. So on this particular slide, it's just an example that you're not required to state where smoking or tobacco use is prohibited on school property. If the sign must state on facility property, then simply in the facility or in building. So the point of this particular one, it really shows a broader reach that there is a tobacco use prohibition on the school property and on the campus. Many people have used this sign in the past, and it's also available at Tech. This is an example of slightly different phrasing. In this particular instance, tobacco-free works at the top of the sign if the tobacco use prohibition is present at the bottom of the sign. Here's an example of a different looking sign. And we recognize that many schools may wish to include the prohibition of other activities. This is acceptable. And you'll see a list of them on the right. Drug-free, weapon-free, alcohol-free, tobacco-free, of course, school zone. And again, tobacco use is prohibited on all school property. So some clarification about how to purchase signs. We tried to do this in a flow chart of sorts. If you are a TUPE grantee, you may use your funds to buy signs. If you know of an LEA who is not receiving TUPE funds, they may use local control assistance funds to purchase signs or submit a claim to the state controller's office. In either situation, though, frankly, I would recommend the LEA to contact their county TUPE coordinator for recommendations and assistance. A link to the complete list of TUPE coordinators will be provided later on in this presentation for your convenience. We've received many questions about youth use versus youth possession. So we tried to create these boxes so you can better understand how school resource officers and schools can respond appropriately. Another question that we receive is about implementing the law. So we get questions such as this. Well, I'm an LEA and I purchased my signs and placed them outside entrances as I was instructed. Aren't I compliant with the law? Well, the quick answer is yes, but the longer answer is this. If you are a TUPE grantee, the answer is no. If you are a TUPE grantee, you must adopt policies that prohibit use of all tobacco products. Our TUPE grantees already know this requirement, but this is what I would say to non-TUPE grantees. This is a teachable moment for educators, students, and visitors and parents, guardians about the dangers of tobacco. Even if you don't have to create the policy, by creating one, you establish authority for this prohibition and have thought out how you will respond to a student who might get caught, say, using an electronic cigarette. A policy in advance would guide you on a complete and thoughtful response. Let's look at some tobacco policies in the next couple of slides that would help you to provide an appropriate intervention and hopefully a recommendation even for making smoking cessation assistance available. So, tobacco-free policies. A tobacco-free school policy must state the use of all tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, are prohibited at all times on all district property, owned or leased, and in all district vehicles. Policies apply to anyone on school property. So, the LEAs determine their own enforcement policies. This is typically included in board-adopted administrative regulations tied to the adopted policies. The enforcement really should depend between students, staff, visitors, and civic use permit holders. So civic use permits for using school property should include language letting community groups know the use of all tobacco products and e-cigarettes are prohibited as a condition to the permit. So these sort of policies should be set up way in advance. So some samples of some good tobacco-free policies. We've provided you with a link to the California School Boards Association. It was updated to reflect the new tobacco-free laws. So we're appreciative of the School Board Association providing us with these sample policies for your use. The other link is the business and non-instructional operations. So on a local level, who should be involved in communicating and enforcing policies along with applying consequences? And so now, hopefully you have a better idea of what tobacco-free policies, what they are, and have resources for where to find some. You might be wondering who should be involved in communicating and enforcing these policies, and that's what we'd like to get into at this time. Essentially everyone. Consider it like a school health team. You really want to engage people and have them involved as they desire. The more engaged they are and the more they take on the process, the more knowledgeable that they will become and share that knowledge with others. In essence, you're building a social norm around a tobacco-free environment, and by inviting all these people to the table, you'll have a better chance of capturing the right tone of the message, and in the end, it should reflect your school community. So invite everyone, school administrators, teachers, counselors, students. There's a wonderful opportunity for students to get perhaps credit for other projects. Certainly involve the parents and other community members. In this instance, truly, the more the merrier. So communicating the policies. This is the nuts and bolts of a tobacco prohibition policy, ensuring that everyone is aware of the policy, understanding the rationale behind it, and knowing what the consequences are if the policy is violated. So you will recall that we reviewed this earlier in the webinar. So this is only one component of the policy, the signs, just so that they know what the policy is. Okay, this slide is very busy, but it has tons of ideas and tips for you. This is meant to give you ideas and suggestions on how to communicate the policy. Here are just some examples. Detailing it in student handbooks and orientation guides. Reviewing, discussing policies at student orientations, including meetings and with new and transfer students. Announcements at morning broadcasts over loudspeaker systems at school events. Printing policy reminders in school event programs. Certainly spreading information through student organizations and activities in newspapers. Encouraging and empowering appropriately how students can confront other students or visitor violators. Information in student newspaper articles and on school websites. Over-communication is the right way to go. On this slide, I also want to point out a couple of links. So the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit is housed at Stanford, and they also have ideas on how to communicate tobacco-free, well, all sorts of things. It's a Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, so I'm going a little bit off topic, but there are sheets and materials about how to educate people about tobacco, but there's lots of information on how to communicate the tobacco-free policy. And of course, for people who find themselves struggling with nicotine addiction, you want to be able to help them. So please utilize the tremendous services of the California Smokers Helpline, and also a link has been provided. 1-800-NO-BUTS. Okay, so the last slide was had to do more with students, but communicating policies to staff and employees. Here are some other ideas. Providing school district employees copies of the policy and a letter of the explanation from the school board. Discussing the policy at staff meetings and new staff orientation. Conducting an in-service presentation on tobacco-related school policies for all staff, including teaching, teachers, bus drivers, aides, food service workers, and maintenance staff. Other ideas and ways that you can communicate the policies: to post information along with a copy of the policy in staff lounges and offices. Telling staff about opportunities for tobacco cessation support programs in the community and how to access them. So the California Smokers Helpline not only has the telephone counseling services, but they also provide local listings of smoking cessation groups in each county. Communicating policies to the parents or guardians. Announcing the policy at all athletic events and meetings, concerts, and plays. Signing student school contracts that address the tobacco policy for participation in co-curricular activities, including an article outlining the policy and implications of the policy in parent-oriented newsletters in schools or community newspapers, letters. So you'll see here there are lots of different ways that you can communicate the policy. I also want to point out it's an opportunity to communicate why the policy is being put into effect. Talk about health, academic, and social reasons for the change, outlining consequences for visitors, and asking for support and enforcement. Again, we've provided you with a couple of links, and you're welcome to use them. One is a sample letter from our Comprehensive Tobacco-Free Policy Toolkit, which is found on the California Department of Education 2B website. And the one below it is, again, the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit from Stanford Medicine. So you may want to check those out when you have some time. Another thing I wanted to point out is if you do go to the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, if you click on school policies from the home page and then click on templates and guidelines, you'll find some of the sample policies as well as a link to tobacco laws. I wanted to point out a terrific sheet prepared in large part by Contra Costa's 2B coordinator who created a great visual for schools about policies, descriptions, enforcement, and penalties. It's meant to be a user-friendly guide on that may help you in creating an enforcement policy. And so please check that out when you have some time. And then finally, communicating policies to the public and the community. There are ways to do this. Removing all ashtrays from school property, right? That would be very critically important to get done. Communicating the policy to parents and business volunteers who maybe assist you in supervising youth. Placing an ad in the paper thanking the school board for its decision for adopting a policy. That's another idea. So again, please check these out and talk to your colleagues, and certainly you can contact us if you need guidance. So enforcement. The key for enforcement is really providing proactive, clear, and consistent messages. You want to post the written policy and signage around campus, point out policies during hiring and contracting process, show your commitment to enforcing the policy consistently, and with the knowledge that you should expect some people to test enforcement of any new policy, but a consistent enforcement sends a clear message. Another thing about enforcement, I would say you want to remain positive with your message, whereby you're really emphasizing health and academic and social impact, encouraging students to make responsible decisions about the health of their bodies and to have respect for other students and staff by not using tobacco on campus. Also focus on the use of tobacco as an unhealthy behavior, not on the user. So teachers and other adults can be role models, but tobacco use promotes unhealthy behavior. Please make sure that tobacco-using adults are not alienated because of their tobacco use. For enforcement, check out some tips in the Comprehensive Tobacco-Free School Policy Toolkit on the 2B website. Also think about who would be doing the enforcement and who's comfortable with it. This is the sort of item that could be included in your tobacco-free policy, and thinking that all through in advance. You want to work with your administrators to determine what the consequences are for people who break this prohibition. Some suggested consequences for students. The parent and guardian should be notified of all violations and actions taken by the school. Please refer students to the guidance counselor or school nurse or other health and counseling services for all offenses, for screening, information, counseling, and a referral. And again, just another comment about offering cessation classes or links students who violate the policy to community-based cessation programs. It should, just a consideration, it shouldn't be completely punitive. We want to help people to quit smoking or quit using tobacco. And bear in mind that cessation programs do vary. Some are after school, weekly, during consecutive periods, Saturdays, during lunch. So there are some good options here. Outlining conditions that will lead to suspension and or accompanied with counseling. Reentry conference should be held prior to the student's return to school with the student, parent, or guardian and administrator. If a suspension is necessary, for an example of a repeat offender who refuses to participate in other options offered, these are the sort of things that should be discussed in advance, and so that you have a good, thoughtful, comprehensive policy in place, which will serve as kind of a guidance document for you. And certainly alternative forms of suspension are preferable. For staff, we would encourage staff to talk with their health professional regarding their tobacco use. And again, there's a link to the helpline. Consequences to staff after the second offense. Staff violations should be considered as insubordination, disciplined as they would be for any other school policy violation. And again, this is the sort of thing to discuss with administration in advance and find the right solutions and remedies for your district. To parents, family members, and the public, progressive enforcement policy is recommended. Public sanctions should involve that you request the individual to stop and refer to the school policy. If the person refuses to stop, request that the individual leave the site of the school function and refer to the school policy. And if the person refuses to leave or is a repeat violator, refer to local authorities. And this is just a summary of what the LEAs should be doing. The signage at the bottom, developing and communicating policies, gathering and communicating with the health team, and then forming consistent enforcement and consequences to any violators. Want to be tobacco-free certified? You must be certified to receive TUPE funds. Contact your local TUPE coordinator at your County Office of Education to learn more about this. This is the list that I mentioned earlier of TUPE coordinators. There's also a link here that will help you in answering FAQs about becoming tobacco-free certified. And then finally, another link to a funding opportunity is the CTALF, the County Technical Assistance and Leadership Funds. Additional resources for this presentation really is the Tobacco Control Laws FAQ, and a link has been provided here for you. It's a fairly comprehensive FAQ. It's 8 pages long, And, of course, we're also available to answer any questions that you might have. So here's my contact, and for the tobacco-free laws, or you're welcome to contact John, who can answer questions about tobacco-free laws and also tobacco-free certification. So I know that we went through a lot of material. We want to thank you for tuning in and listening. And we would like to, through the Q&A box, answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Okay, for those who may be unfamiliar, if you go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there should be a box up there that says Q&A. If you click on that, it should open up the box for you where you can type in questions to be sent to us for response. I'm not seeing any questions coming in, Sarah.
Any questions?
We have not sent the message out, but I will be shortly. The frequently asked questions document about the laws has finally been approved and is posted online. The letter from the superintendent should be coming shortly. We now have the FAQs posted, so we can now insert those into the letter from the superintendent. So there will be a letter coming out to all superintendents of districts, county offices of education, and all leaders of the charter schools, all administrators of the charter schools, so they will all receive this from the state superintendent of public instruction.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. So this will conclude today's webinar. We thank you kindly for tuning in. Please be in touch with us if any questions pop up. And we wish you a very happy and healthy holiday. Thank you. Take care.